Okay, so from a key takeaways perspective, I look at 5 core things that security professionals, CISOs, should be asking themselves when you're bringing AI to the enterprise. Number 1, how is the data going to be used with the ML service? Which also takes into account whether the ML service is retaining data, how is the data used to train or improve the model. So heavy on the data, okay, number 1. Number 2, are the same models used by all customers, right? Thinking once again on how is the data being used. Number 3, what are the type of models used? Is it generated models, discriminative models? The characteristics are different. The risks are a bit different as well, so it matters. Number 4, what are the safeguards that we put in place based on the risks that start to unfold from the prior questions that you're asking and based on the models and the data on how that gets used. Number 5, access control. If you expect the model to be accessing information with different access control, how do you ensure that all of that data is properly constrained, right? So those are the 5 takeaways.
Welcome to CyberOXtales, the podcast where cybersecurity scenarios meet reality. In each episode, we'll sit together with the top cyber pros to dissect major security incidents, giving you actionable insights and practical advice to fuel your playbooks and success. Ready? Let's go.
Hello. Hi, I'm Neatsun Ziv. I'll be your host today at CyberOXtales. And today with me, we've got something special. We've got Damian. But first, Damian, why don't you present yourself?
Yes, thank you, Neatsun, for having me here. Really happy to be able to share from my own experience, a little bit of my own journey, as well as on AI and working with large language models. So to give you a tiny bit of background about myself, I've been doing security for about 25 years. So I started quite some time back, all the way back when I was in high school in Argentina. And for me, the reason why I pulled into security, it was just because of the challenge, right? I mean, somebody tells you, oh, you're not supposed to do that, or, oh, that's very hard, or whatever else. And for me, it's like, well, that sounds a challenge. Why is it that I cannot do it, right? And also back then, it's not that you can learn about security from books, from the academia, etc. It was just through friends. It was literally just reading on your own and taking it from there, right?
Just exploring.
That's 100% correct. You were on your own,
Yes.
right? And for me, it was just the pleasure more than anything else, where you were able to do something that somebody else told you that was impossible or whatever else, right? It's just that achievement, that personal satisfaction that I have. There were no bug bounties back in the day either, by the way, right? That it's sort of fairly new. Now it's a bit old, but a new thing to some extent. So I ended up coming to the US to study, to do my undergrad, and then from there, what was very interesting, I ended up going to Microsoft. I ended up staying there for 12 years. I joined Microsoft in 2000. This was before that famous trustworthy computing memo from Bill Gates from 2002, right? Between 2000 and 2002, there was a lot of stuff going on Microsoft products. People didn't trust Microsoft. Some can argue maybe not today, but nevertheless, a different story.
It's been 22 years, so it's been a while.
Yes, indeed. But for me, one of the core reasons why I joined Microsoft was the people. A lot of smart people to learn from, right? And after the trustworthy computing memo from Bill Gates, there was the core secure Windows initiative that was formed there. I ended up joining that team, and literally from there, I've been on security teams since then, right? Having a lot of fun. from there, spent a short period of time at VMware. And afterwards, I joined Amazon. And that was a very interesting opportunity. It was through a friend of mine who reached out and said, hey, you may be interested in this role. And I'm like, well, okay, tell me a little bit more. Back then, to put things in perspective, Amazon only had two consumer devices. It was the Kindle, right? The Kindle, the e-ink reader, right?
Yeah.
And the
I still
tablets.
have it.
You still have it? Yeah. They're great. And the Kindle, the tablets, the Fire tablets there. And I was like, okay, yeah, they need some help on security. So I ended up, I talked to a few people. I was like, oh, wow, this is great. And kind of, I joined and started building the security team focusing on Amazon consumer devices as well as the core services that supported the devices. And I joined before Alexa existed. And Alexa was created within that organization. So I was providing security and also some privacy support to that organization. And that's the first time that I was exposed to ML, right? I learned about natural language understanding, NLU, natural language processing, NLP. Also started to dive a bit deep into what's really anonymous data. What is this thing about differential privacy? How do you distinguish, right, whether what somebody may be asking Echo and Alexa, right, to be sensitive versus not, right? You can argue, what's the weather? It's pretty innocuous, right? But maybe if you're asking Alexa to send a message to your kids within your house school or something like that, I'm like, well, there could be sensitive content, right? So literally, we started to spend a good amount of time. I was just learning. There were a lot of great ML experts, and diving deep and figuring out these subtle boundaries, which you can argue, I come in from a security background, but also this was touching privacy and kind of start putting the right building blocks in place. All of this was way before GPT, to be clear, right? When I left...
So basically, from what I'm seeing right now, you're like a visionary. It's like, I should invest in the companies that wherever you're going, it's like...
No, but thank you. You can argue it's just luck and the serendipitous just moment, to be fair. So from there, this was, as I said, this was before GPT. I still remember to this day when I brought the first Echo device, and to put things in perspective, Siri already existed, right? Yeah. Siri existed. I never really found Siri to be useful back in the day, full disclosure. So I brought a pre-release version of Echo to my house. And then my mom, my ex-wife, they literally started to engage with it. I was just a bit skeptical, full disclosure, right? I'm like, because I didn't use Siri, okay? So I was like, okay, what's this new about it? And obviously, I was personally completely wrong, right? We saw the rise kind of Alexa since then. And a couple of other things that we spend a good amount of time as well on the device is figuring out, okay, how do we provide the right safeguards from a device perspective, right? If you mute the device, etc., right? So we did a lot of work on the hardware side, and then also obviously in the back end on when does the back end needs to be engaged to do the right processing, and how do we provide the right controls to the customers as well. So I remember getting a demo about Moveworks, the product itself, right? And to put things in perspective, our product, I'm the CISO here at Moveworks for 3 years, and the product just enables people to search, to act, and literally get work done across the enterprise. So when I saw a demo of the product within the context of Slack, it also works on Microsoft Teams, I was like, dang, I want to use that now, right? I was like, there's a lot of beauty on it. And mostly because, personally, I felt that whenever I needed to get an IT issue, HR issue, finance, procurement, etc., resolved, what do I need to do? Go reach out to a human, send them an email, stand on a queue waiting to get the issue resolved, right? Or sometimes it was the opposite thing. People needed to wait on me to approve something, which in some cases I didn't even know that it was waiting on me, right? And that's what our product does here at Moveworks today, which is a beauty. Yes, I'm biased, but
Obviously.
I really like it.
So beside the obvious recommendation by Moveworks, which is always a good recommendation. So wait, let me stop you here for a second. So
Yeah.
you've seen like Microsoft operating system, like core level, old languages, what today is known as not memory safe languages, going to virtualization, going to cloud, going to AI. So you've been tracing, beside mobile, you've been tracing all the interesting trends out there. And you've been looking at it from security perspective. What are the, I would say, number one insight when you think about the big trends that you're seeing in the industry? Like, is it changing the way that security is being done? Or is it, no, it's just the same fundamentals, it's just that you apply the same principles in a different way?
I think that's a good question. I will argue, number one, from a principled perspective, the same ones still, quote unquote, apply, right? You need to understand your threats, the risks, mitigations, severity, right, of issues. At the same time, I will argue also that the quality of, quote unquote, production code, I'm not saying everywhere, but it has gone up in certain industries, which has made things harder from a security perspective. But also, if we still look at some of the recent incidents that continue to happen, right, it's still very, very possible for things to occur. And some of them even have led, I mean, I remember, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I remember when I was at Microsoft, when SQL Slammer hit. For those of you that might not remember that, that ended up bringing down chunks of the internet, right? It was a vulnerability on SQL. Even though the patch was available, people didn't really know how to install it, etc. And spread. It spread pretty quickly, right? So you can argue we haven't had a situation, quote unquote, like that necessarily, but there's been similar other.
Eternal Blue, maybe.
Yeah, well, the one that I'm. Okay, now the name is escaping me of the. There was a specific botnet that ended up just bringing down chunks of
Ninda, I think it was at the time.
No, that was. I'm talking about 5 years ago. Ninda was way before. I can't remember the name, but there was.
Cerber, maybe.
What?
Cerber with a C? That the one you talk about?
No.
Okay.
I'll try to think about it. But anyways, but that ended up bringing down chunks of the internet because it was just a botnet that was using distributed denial of service, right? Against, if I remember correctly, against some DNS and whatnot, and impacted. It was just chunks of AWS, Netflix, etc. were brought down. But anyways, so going back to your question, so from a principles, I think they still apply. We have refined them. We have gotten better, right? But also, I think the quality of the code, etc., that we are producing has gotten better. If we look at Windows, if we look at Mac, look at Android, look at iOS, right? Significantly better. If we look at the production code that we put today on our services, significantly more reliant. We have a lot more capabilities.
So
I wish.
wait. Let me challenge you on this. Okay, so
Go.
I'm not sure if you've seen the graphs of CVEs found per year. From if you're looking on a graph, I'd probably say that we're in a better. I wouldn't say we're in better shape. I would say that we are in a worse shape than before because you're saying like every year we've got 10% increase in the velocity of CVEs detected and created. Last year was it like 30 something new CVEs detected. It's like a few hundreds per day. It's impossible to track anymore.
Yeah. We have also gotten significantly better on having tools to identify issues and people getting a lot smarter to go deeper as well, right? I
I think
think,
there's one more change that when
go.
you're talking about then, it was like you had to deploy those products and actually update them. Now most of them are services that you're saying, yes, there is an issue, but it's somebody else's problem. They will fix it, which makes life a bit easier.
Uh, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because from my point of view, um, I don't know.
Do you miss
Always from
upgrading an Exchange server on-prem? It's like I don't
say
think
that
a lot of
again.
people. I'm saying not many people miss upgrading an Exchange server on-prem because of a
Oh,
security issue.
oh, for sure. No, that I would agree with. But the responsibility, from my point of view, we as security teams, we always own core aspects of that responsibility. I mean, let me give you an example. When uh, when I was at Amazon, and I learned that we were using a version of Android on our tablets, um, one of the things that I realized, we were not getting back then all of the right security updates in a timely manner, right? And I was like, okay, this to me doesn't make sense. You could have argued, fine, that's the problem of the engineering team. But me, as a security professional, it's like, okay, how do I bridge that gap? How do I ensure that the developers get the right set of fixes in a timely manner, ideally before the vulnerability gets publicly disclosed, so our customers can get can stay safe. And so ended up working with the head of security, an Android, Adrian Ludwig, to be specific, at the time, and we went through several discussions, and eventually, not going into all of the details, we were able to get that level of information so our devices could be patched. But as security professionals, what that meant is the overall devices in the field, not just ours, but just Android devices in general, would all be better off, right? If I fast forward to today, here at Moveworks, we have been spending significant amount of time on getting our services, right, to getting our services fully patched from a critical and important security vulnerabilities, right? But this is work that my team has been doing very closely, working with the DevOps teams to ensure that we figured out, okay, what's the right cadence? How do we ensure that we don't we don't cause an outage, right, and whatnot? So we own part of that responsibilities as well. Things have gotten easier, you can argue, from patching, but still, we own the responsibilities, from my point of view.
Okay, so let me ask you about the communication of risk. Did that change over the past 20 years that you've been doing this journey? Did the communication of risk to your peers, to your managers, to your, I don't know, the developers in your organization, did it change over the past 20 years, or is it kind of the same, just, I don't know, we might have changed terms?
So no, well, from my point of view, it changed a lot. Back then, people didn't want to do security. I'm not saying that today everybody wants to do security, but back then it was like, no, developers like don't see the value, etc. We had to explain why. For me, the easiest explanation, and engineers usually like that, is if you write secure code, the overall quality of your code goes up. Why? Because you will have less bugs. And if it has less bugs, it has less security vulnerabilities, right? But I still remember to this day, I was at VMware. We were pushing down a static code analyzer, right, to the engineering. We were enabling it. Before we enabled it, obviously, we took on the onus and the responsibility to ensure that the rate of false positives was low, right? And there was, I think it was distinguished engineer or somebody, maybe that wasn't the right title, but somebody high up, very technical, who was there for a very, very long time, who never truly believed on the static code analyzers. And he ended up getting one of those bugs, right? One of the reports. He was like, yeah, I don't think this is real, but okay, fine, you guys are annoying me enough, I'll go take a look. Person took a look. He not only fixed that bug, he ended up fixing a bunch of other bugs within that same code base. There were similarities to it. And then he came back to us and said, you know what? You guys were right, okay? Thank you. Obviously, we did a bunch of work before that because the quality of our output matters so we can influence the engineers. If we give a bunch of garbage to engineers, they're going to hate us.
It's like focusing on the 5% that matter is that's the key.
Exactly. Focus on the high quality checkers, and that's kind of how we ended up deploying it. So it was a very positive story. That is something that I continue to carry to this day. When I look at it today, in most cases, the conversation goes, okay, what are the key security things you want to focus first? Security or privacy things you want us to focus first, right? As security teams, we own that responsibility. One of the key things that I tell to my team and to others, if all security issues are critical, none of them are.
Exactly.
We, as security team, are failing to do our job because we cannot help you prioritize. And we shouldn't rely on the engineers to prioritize. The onus is on us to do it, right?
So give me like the quick 3 steps from your perspective. When you think about what are the 5% that matters, how does it look like from your perspective? How do you envision it inside your head?
Just from a risk perspective?
From a risk, give me a visual. How do you think about it? How do you imagine this as a metric, as a graph, how do you think about this?
The way I see it, from my point of view, it always starts with the customer. Okay, the customer is key. And what I mean by that is, what is the true risk of whatever this issue is related to the customer, right? What's the impact, right? Mm-hmm. Is there customer data involved? Kind of, and is it single customer? Is it multiple customers, right? So thinking about it from that perspective, and then we can go into the AI space as well, because I think that the data, it's key there. But that's kind of where I start, right? Figuring out, okay, what is the true impact from the customer? Being able to distill that.
So let me just try to give you an extreme example. So if somebody installs on one of your servers a crypto miner in a theoretical company, you're saying, look, company impact, yes, we're going to pay some. Yes, it's really bad that somebody installed something, but customer perspective, no damages whatsoever, not impactful. Priority level, it is a severe event, but in the risk level, it's one notch lower.
So, okay, let me put it this way. I think it depends. Okay, somebody installed it. What did they install it? Was it on their own, quote unquote, instance that they had, not really being able to access?
Let's take the easy case. No access to data whatsoever, a test environment of development, no data, no real projects.
Right. So then the risk is, I will agree with you, the risk is lower, right? The question number one is, do we have the tools to identify that, by the way? Because usually the tools on those ended up being, oops, a month later we see a spike in our cost, right, when we get the bill. Okay, but ideally, do we have the right tools to identify that earlier on before we start seeing the spike? But anyways, and okay, so that's lower. So what do we do then? What are the capabilities do we have once we detect it? What should we do? Should we action right away? Can we actually do that? In this case, I will argue if we know something should be easy, we can action and we can just kind of shut it down, right? We have our own security team. We have the expertise on what to do in situations like that. Let's go just engage with DevOps just to get it shut down. But would that require customer communication? No. It's all internal, et cetera, right? There was no customer data that was compromised. So from my point of view, and I would love to hear kind of if you have a different point of view, but the risk is low, right? Just based on what you described. The impact is more to the business because there is a cost, and also that employee, what most likely they did, it's in breach of the company policies, unless the company wants to allow that to happen. I don't know. Fictitious companies, so that's will be up to the debate and discussion.
Okay. Moving on, because
Yes.
I just wanted to be part of the things we're trying to do in this podcast is help people stepping on to the risk executive role in cyber to understand how do you communicate those risks, because usually going to your senior leadership and just saying, look, somebody installed a crypto miner on our servers, but it is an isolated event that is not that severe, and just having this conversation and not freaking out is not that easy. I know it sounds easy the way that you explained, but it is not that easy saying, yes, somebody actually installed a crypto miner on our production. Fortunately, nothing happened.
Well, okay. Let me put it this way. If you haven't been communicating about the security privacy posture on an ongoing basis to the executive team, just overall risk, highlighting true open issues, right? And 6 months go by and the first thing you do is you come with that, that's just not the right way to approach it, okay? You need to have an ongoing communication with the executive team. What are the good things that you're doing? What are the gaps that you have? What are you doing to close the gaps? From my point of view, that is key, being able to explain, to share things in an ongoing basis. One of the other things that I tell my team in general is I don't like surprises. Yes, I like to get gifts. Yes, I like good surprises. But in the context when I'm using surprises here is I don't like to be surprised. I like to know. We found an issue. We don't know what it is. We're investigating. We'll keep you up to date. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem. Is that the approach that we're taking? That's fine. Just let me know. What can I do to help, right? So on the other hand, if we go back to the example, no information was being shared, and now all of the sudden, you just share that to them. Yes, the executive team will panic, the board, et cetera, depending on to the extent, right? But if you have an ongoing open dialogue and you're like, yeah, this is a minor issue, we are handling it, we'll let you know next steps. They're like, okay, thank you. Then just go as business as usual to some extent.
So wait, now I want to take it to a different direction. So we're starting to enter the age of AI. Some people say that we are already in it. I'm saying we're just in the beginning. But how is this going to change, or the CISO role, especially in communication, how is it going to change over the coming years?
So for me, the way I see how AI has been evolving, right? I see similarities on when the cloud started to take shape. And I'll rewind myself. When I was at Microsoft, right, in the late 2000s, kind of starting to work on Azure, I remember engaging with some very, very large customers that they're like, okay, yeah, we can use the cloud, we will encrypt the data, and we'll push everything encrypted to the cloud, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay, but that kind of defeats the purpose. We cannot do compute on just a binary blob. It's all encrypted. We cannot access it or anything, right? And when I look at AI, it's heavy on the data. People trying to understand, like, well, when I use any large language model, it's been trained with that, which is not. It's a fallacy. It depends on how the company uses it, right? They might train with the data, but they might not train with the data. So from my point of view, the core focus is around kind of what are the safeguards that we have for the data, whether the data is used to train the model, whether the data is being used for the model to perform an action, right? Also about the access controls that are in place if you're doing a search, right? And the large language model ended up kind of indexing the material and all of that. How do we ensure that the right permissions are being put in place? And then the other aspect, as well, we generated models, right? Which now GPT is a generated model. How do we ensure that the stuff that it spits out, it's accurate, it's true, kind of the hallucinations aspects of it. So there's new risks. And that's one of the, by the way, core areas that we have been working on for the last, 2 years since GPT became to life, and learning from others as well. There's a lot of people doing a lot of great work, a lot of research on the space, learning, figuring out, okay, what are the true risks for us based on how our product works in the context of Slack, in the context of Microsoft Teams, right? And that, for us, has been key. We don't expose, by the way, a large language model directly to customers, and that's give us certain reassurances, right? But nevertheless, we need to stay on top because there's a lot of smart people out there, and making sure that we are doing the right set of things. So our product behaves properly in an enterprise environment.
But you touched here something interesting, which is trusting AI. And a derivative of your role as a CISO in a company that is actually building AI models is actually how do you create internally the trust that what you're building is actually right? You mentioned a bit of data. You're asking about shadow IT risks, that how do the data is spilled out? What do you see when data is transported to you? It's like a lot of things to start considering beside the traditional CISO and vulnerability management and networking. It's a new frontier. We did not have it a few years back.
Well, okay. Let me tell you the approach we have taken. Number one, I want to take a step back and then I'll take a step forward. To take a step back, before GPT, right? Our product, our company started 7-8 years ago at this point in time, and we were using ML from the earlier days, right? But GPT became a thing a year after I joined. So in that first year, for me, one of the key things when we engage with customers, they were not so much focusing on the ML AI aspect. They were more focusing on the overall value of the product and whether a bot, quote unquote, could work properly in their enterprise, right? And from that, most of the conversations that we had, not saying all, but most of the conversations we had focused around how do we safeguard their data, the integrations that we have with their systems, right? How all of that work properly. You can argue, quote unquote, regular SaaS security, right? Privacy also play a role, the way we do data masking, anonymization.
But what is like a big data problem, not an AI problem?
Yes. Since GPT, then all of a sudden people started to learn a lot more, getting exposed. Also on the news, we saw some large companies making mistakes, not the companies, but employees within the companies kind of wanted to use it, right? And from that point of view, what we had to do is, and we shared this with a prospect and customers, we ended up coming up with a list of the core risks that we see on our product. And then from there, what are the core mitigations that we have? Let me just give you two concrete examples. One of them is hallucinations, right? Yes. Our product is on an enterprise setting. So if you need, let's say, hey, I need a new headset, right? And if the information that you ended up getting back is hallucinated, right? It tells you to go to the wrong place, whatever else, it's useless.
It's more than useless, it's annoying.
Right. So we spend a good amount of time making sure that the responses that we provided are grounded, right? We use RAG, and from my point of view, that helps explain like, oh, okay, fine, that's a risk, that's the mitigation that you have in place, etc. Another one is how do we ensure that the responses that a large language model gives back are appropriate for work? Think about it, toxicity filter, right? So internally, we build a query risk framework that tries to understand the context of the input that that the user provides, right? We obviously rely on several language models behind the covers, figuring out what is the right response, whether we need to take an action, whether we need to give information back to the person, and then the response that gets generated back, right, also gets plugged into this risk framework. So in essence,
It's interesting. It's like the human brain. It's like when you have an answer and you're saying, no, I should definitely not say that one.
you can argue, yes. So in essence, we're trying to assess what's the risk of this thing, right? If you want to maybe an X-rated joke or something like that, yeah, our product will not give you that response, right, to some extent. But these are mitigations that we put in place based on the risks that we identify so our product behaves properly within the context of the enterprise. And that's, when I look at it as a security professional, if I want to use a product or some other AI, ML setting, you need to understand what are the risks that you have, right? From a code perspective, just going on a different topic, we don't offer those capabilities, but a lot of great companies that. So one of the things that I assess is, okay, what happens if the code provided by one of their risks, for example, if the code provided by these large language models is not safe, right? What do we do in that context? And the developer says, yes, please, they just kind of quickly check on it. Yeah,
Exactly.
commit. So that's one. The other one is, and this is, you can argue, more legal than security, but it could have security implications if you need to make your code open source. But they give you some code, and then the license, kind of who owns the license of that code, et cetera, right? Just another aspect. So it's important to understand those risks and then figure out, okay, there's never going to be something that is zero, but are you comfortable enough based on what you've learned about the solution, et cetera, to be able to use it, or potentially no? And if the answer is no, what would it take to make that work, to enable that specific scenario? Employees are smart. And this is one of the things that I learned long ago. The employees are smart. If they want to use something, they'll figure out a way to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how do we, security, privacy professionals, enable them to do the best work they can within the confines, within the risks that we feel comfortable, and for them not to just do that shadow IT?
You know, as I'm hearing you say that, what I'm hearing is that a few years back, it was more of like boundaries, black and white, this is allowed, this is not. And now we've got, I wouldn't say grayscales, we've got a lot of different, I would say, a variety of colors that you don't have even saying it's a grayscale. It's not, no, it's like you need to compare purple to blue and say, what is better? It's like, there is no right and wrong. It's like everybody has to bring their own, let's say, belief system into the equation.
For me, if it's like that, it makes it very hard. If it's every belief system, if I like risks to be quantified based on the data, based on the potential exposure, right? Give you an example. And we need to onboard a new vendor. Obviously, we do try to do an assessment of what that entails, et cetera. What data are we going to be sharing with them? Like, okay. We do all of that work. But then we don't get a reassurance that it'll be properly safeguarding the data that we're going to be sharing with them. Why? Because the information that we got was not very good. I'll remember, okay, let me give you, I'm not going to mention any companies, but I remember that one of these vendors, they told us that some information was encrypted. When I look at it, when I looked into it, it wasn't encryption, what they were doing. It was a very simple hashing algorithm, okay? Not going into much details, but you can probably fill in the blanks there. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is not security. This is just, I mean, you can use basic hashing, right? You can do basic hashing just for keying and all of that for simple, like, okay, for a better indexing, but this is not security. And as we started kind of asking simple questions, peeling that onion, yeah, clearly security wasn't up to the bar that we have. And in that context, we ended up agreeing to not move forward, right, with that specific vendor. By the way, some of that takes time. It's not trivial.
Oh, yes.
It's not free, right? And also, I will argue some of this is where a large language model might be able to help you, assuming the source of the data that vendors give you, which you can challenge where the source of the data is not very good, but nevertheless, it could help you try to understand kind of, okay, we're going to be sharing this data. This is our security posture. It's usually just pages and pages and pages of content. So it's like bring it all together. And what are the residual risks that we have? What are the issues? What can I do in that space?
So with that, I want to take you to the last section, which is,
Sure.
what are your takeaways? If somebody is listening to this and saying, okay, I'm listening to an expert, he's done the journey, he knows what he's talking about, give us some of your takeaways.
So from my point of view, and this is a bit of how I've been thinking throughout this journey. Number one, if you're going to bring an AI, ML, the first question you need to understand is how is the data going to be used within these ML services, right? You can argue even if it's deployed within your environment, I'm like, okay, and if something goes down, et cetera, or if it needs to be improved, okay. So how is the data, right? Is the service retaining the data for any purposes? What data is used to train or improve the model, right? Are the same models used by all customers? So if you get a specific model that for you, just as a customer, or would all customers be sharing that model? And by the way, there is different thinking. There is no right or wrong, but you need to be able to ask the questions just to understand that.
It's the colors question.
Yeah, you need to understand the context, right? What type of models are being used? Here at Moveworks, we use generative and discriminative models for different purposes. So discriminative models is used for search, indexing, right? Okay, these are the models. They're used for this purpose. I understand, right? And that there's still some education that we do with customers today. By the way, we explain on that because they think everything is a GPT model, which is not always the case. And then what safeguards are in place for the different risks based on how the product is going to be used, whether it's hallucinations, prompt injection, disinformation, whether things are safe for work or whatever else, right? Thinking about the threats from that angle, thinking about the mitigations there, and if you feel good enough. And then the last one, which is also a pretty important one, how is access control respected, right? Let's say ML is getting information from all of these different data sources, right? To do search, for example, how do you ensure that if user A has access here but not here, when it's using the ML model, which the ML model is indexing all of this stuff, right, all of these data sources, how do we ensure that the right information gets shared back and only what that person is meant to see? On that one, one of the things that I've seen today is overall access control in the enterprise is still a bit messy.
It is.
So when you put an index to an ML model, it's kind of just to index the content and whatnot. When things get served back to the user, usually the problem is not that the ML messed up, it ended up being that the access on the source was not set up correctly. I'm not saying that's always the case, but stuff like that happens. So going back, just for the key takeaways, how is data used with ML models, right? Thinking about how the models, whether it's used for training, how it gets improved. The second one, are the same models used kind of by all customers? There are specific models, type of models that are being used and for which purpose? What are the safeguards based on the specific risk of those models, based on the data that they have access to? And then the last one, it's around the access control on how the model ended up doing the right things. Ideally, by the way, a model should never, at least today, maybe in the future might change, but today, a model should not be trying to guess the identity of a user. It's likely it's going to get it wrong. That needs to be deterministic. Anyways,
So with that, first of all, thank you very much for the show. I think we learned a lot of great things today. Really appreciate it, and hope that the audience were able to get some nuggets out of it, especially on how to communicate risks in the age of AI.
Yeah, no, it's been my pleasure, Neatsun. Thank you very much for having me. So have a great day. And thank you everyone else for listening.
That's a wrap on another episode of CyberOXtales. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your peers. Visit us at ox.security/podcast to access all episodes and exclusive content or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.